Hello everybody, Всем привет. Today I'm going to go over a housekeeping project. The code of this game is like the main function is approximately 1,300 lines right now, and it's starting to be large enough that if I upload the entire file to the AI, it spends a lot of tokens crunching through it, figuring out where it needs to be, and especially when I'm just adding a minor feature, it becomes very expensive. It takes a while, and there's always risk when you put your code up there with the for the AI looking at it, that it's going to just decide to randomly change something. And I want to be more surgical about how I make changes, and this is going to increase complexity a little bit by breaking it into multiple files, but it also increases the ability to target certain parts of the code for developing. So the AI, I asked it, just help me break up this game file into smaller, more manageable files. So it came up with render utils, which I think these are just like basic processes that it found itself doing, and that's slightly different than resources, which is actually like, I think, loading the images. Yeah, so this is like 200 lines of ICN loading code. So the render utilities is like stuff about animation, rebuilding, re-rendering. This resources is just loading stuff, loading the images in. So this is loading. This is some utilities that are sort of more lower level helper functions of how those images are then used. And then this is the actual rendering, rendering the ground, the objects, the hero, the fog of war, the border tiles around the edge of the game, the route marker when the hero wants to move around, and of course tracking it all in the mini map too, where you have your viewport finder, things like that. The render UI here that focuses on this part over here, where you have the mini map, but you also have these other elements. The hero locator, the castle locator, the adventure buttons, and the little status window here. So those pieces, you see locator panel, advanced mini hero. I guess it's the status window, but we call it the mini hero panel in this. And I have a function to truncate the hero name because some of the heroes have a truncated name down in this status window. Input.h is breaking out when you click on certain things, like cursor for tile. So this changes to the castle, this changes to the hero. This sorts out if you're moving this around. I think a lot of those mouse click related things are handled there. The UI state is this is like capturing, are you using the mini map and like dragging it right now, or are you in the hero screen? So these are sort of like higher level game management variables as to like what is going on at even a slightly more global level than on this map or the flow. There might be like a battle, in battle or something would be a state that I would expect to be there in the future. I'm also expecting to add a castle screen pretty soon. So I would imagine there would be something there where it's like castle screen state. So the game main is going to be smaller, and the AI estimates it could be 200 or 300 lines of code instead of 2,000. Now, I'm not sure that it was 2,000 because, like the version that I had here, this is only 1,300. So I'm not sure where it's getting 2,000, but whatever. So then it gives me an expected order of doing this, and the practical advice is avoiding putting logic in headers unless it's a template or something in line. Forward declaring, so packing things into map.h. I think what this means is allowing the render map and render UI functions to use the game state and hero states that are stored or defined in the map header. So like render map and render UI would include the map header. Let's see, what else do we have? Yeah, keeping the layout constants within the UI code so we can adjust the movements of different elements. And then, yeah, this is probably the most important, not trying to do it all at once. That's how things get really broken, and especially the AI does make mistakes, and so if it makes mistakes and it's trying to do everything at once, it's just much more complicated. So I said, okay, let's go ahead, let's do this render utils. Let's split that out. And then I also have a CMakeLists, makefile lists, and that I need to, as I break these files out, I need to make sure that the compiler knows about them and builds them and does that correctly. So so it goes through, breaks out render utils, gives me a little bit of information about how to use them. I download these pieces, patch my MakeLists file, basically attempt to compile it, and I get some errors here, which I just paste in, and it says, oh yeah, we forgot these pal cycles, number of pal cycles in the palette. So makes some minor updates, adding the missing definitions. I download these, and then I check that it compiles. And I don't know why I said this, the per frame map rendering passes, but anyway, I encourage it to go on to the next step and do rendering. So goes through, does some rendering stuff, and gives me its little summary, but it takes a while, so I have to continue. It hits a Claude tool usage limit. And goes through, generates a layout, which this is this has a lot of the, how would I describe this? The screen space compile time constants. So this is basically where you're specifying the relationships of elements in the game that are going to be processed by the rendering, like the hero visibility radius. That's an easier one to understand. Resources is now broken out of the game main, so we're tracking the ground layers, the sprites, the mini monster sprites, animation frames would be stored here, things like that. And the resources CPP, actually all it's focused on is just loading that the AGG file. The render map does all the rendering functions, and render map CPP does doesn't really change these rendering implementations like the stone tiles, the minimap ground color, minimap dark color. All of those were static functions, but this, all of this stuff, like the dark colorings for the minimap, the stone tile that's out here on the border, those kinds of functions have just been moved into this render map, the render map CPP file. And then the game main just includes resources.h, and it includes some of these other functions that were useful, like the fog lookup, the hero animation. Those are basically moved out as well. So, I mean, they were moved out before, but now to be able to access some of the sprites and things that were loaded in and loaded in from the ICN files, it just needs to include the resources.h. So these are the new files that were created. I download them, put them in my directory, and I'm just double checking that some of the older resources files that were created were the same or similar. And one of the files, because it seemed a little strange that it was generating the resources files again, and so I just said, hey, can you double check this? And it gave me some advice on how to add things to my CMakeLists file. And I gave it the output from the compilation. We got a pretty significant set of errors. That burns tokens quite a bit. So something wasn't being found with the render map, and the resources basically needed to be renamed to HOMM1 : resources. So we needed to get the namespace right. And I guess it removed an ambiguous function that was... Oh yeah, so basically we just needed another HOMM1 ahead of that. So getting the namespace right. So anyway, made some changes there, update the namespace. And we got some compiler errors here about the locations of the scroll. I think it's the scroll window here. So that basically the UI constants for things like the minimap, rectangle, and the viewport. This kind of stuff was this was moved to the layout file, just where other UI layout values are created. So did we have that before? Yep, we had a layout file up here. So anyway, we just moved those, downloaded that, and then I just asked it for an update because this chat was starting to get longer. So it gave me some refactor notes, and then I moved on to a new chat window and dropped in the refactor notes, and let's see. I think it was actually here, this chat. Yep. So I dropped in the refactor notes, and again, I just give it this basic context of I'm rebuilding this game engine, started refactoring, and I'm about halfway through. So I give it kind of the summary. We're looking to do input, render UI, UI state. These are the next ones that we're looking to do. It gives us the UI state, input H. It actually gives us quite a bit. And I'm just double checking, like, do I need to include anything in the mouse.h? And it says, nope, mouse.h already has everything it needs. I gave it some other files, just double checking, like, hey, I'm not missing anything in my hero screen or my hero animation or my fog of war lookup. And so I downloaded those, these previous files, give them a run, and the hero max movement points is defined in route.h, and this is a variable I'm going to change later when I fix the movement, which is currently a little bit broken. But the hero max MP is defined in route, which the render UI doesn't include, so we have to just add route to this, and then that that fixed it. So I'm saying thanks, that worked, and then I want to get some documentation, and I want to break it up into different layers of different pieces of documentation here. So it ends up breaking it out into a number of smaller files. This is my current documentation folder. I have some build notes, like how to actually build the game, and something about the fog of war. So it output all this documentation, and then yeah, I wanted it to update my map format and fog of war, especially removing like stale info, just because things get a little, sometimes the AI will document and say, oh yeah, we thought it was this, but it was actually this, and sometimes that information just kind of clutters it up. So those tend to fade out when you frequently ask it to remove stale info. So it gave me some updates about different elements, and this note about the hero visibility radius of the warlock being 6. And then I also want to double check that the document matches what my code actually has, because just that I looked over this fog of war markdown file and I noticed that actually it looks kind of like it's missing some stuff. Like I think I did some more complicated things than this. And so it did find some discrepancies and updated it to, to fix that. And then I wanted to update my README, my general README file to include, all of these documentation pieces, but also these are now all of the files that I have in the project, and just kind of a summary of all of that. And that's something when I start projects, then I can dump in, like, here's the architecture, here's some targeted documentation, and here's the change I want to make. So again, the reason for doing this documentation is like, it's good for me to like read over and understand. It's also good for me to dump this into the AI and say, here's some context to get you up to speed quickly so we can make some very targeted changes. And that both uses tokens efficiently, but it also just makes it like more, it's more parsable. If the AI goes off the rails, you're more likely to detect it and either not commit those changes or just realize that it made some mistakes and start over, or it's providing a tighter leash on the AI, so you're more in control when you have control of the context. And I had this other one open, which I need to remember what I did here. So, I think I did this out of order. So this was one of my previous attempts. So I think I showed this one. I should have actually. I showed the third one and the fourth one, and this was actually the second one. So this was me breaking out the resources file. That's why I didn't remember in my in my previous chat review, I didn't remember breaking out the resources. But basically, this is how the resources file was created, where it broke out these functions of finding the AGG directory and locating that file and the base file name, and then the actually generating the resources. And so it told me I could remove a bunch of my image processing stuff. So I could remove AGG, ICN, TIL, palette, render utils, mouse, and hero screen. All of that is now included in resources.h, so I don't need to use those, include those anymore. So that shrinks the file size, shrinks some of the complexity. I do need the BMP, fog lookup, map, route, etc. At least at this time. I think some of those get moved out further on in the process. And so I also ran in, like I'm loading all the maps, or I just have all this map loading stuff, and that broke when I did the first breakout of resources. That broke, and so I just had to add these functions back in, at least initially, to make it work and keep going.